Welcome to Best Available Podcast, presented by Best Available Player, episode 24. It is Monday, January 18th, 2021, halfway through January already. We're moving on quick here with Matt. We got a lot to talk about today, and we won't take up too much of your time. We have NFL Divisional Weekend, which is supposed to be, in theory, probably the best weekend for the NFL. This week, we'll get into it. We have some NHL that we're going to talk about. Season is underway. We might hit on the MLB offseason. And of course, we have to talk about Drew Brees as well. But Matt, how are you feeling? How are you doing?
Doing pretty good, Ryan. This will be a historic week. And you might be thinking, why is that? Not because of the inauguration, Ryan. It's because I, Matt DeLuca, will finish my first book, front to back, in like 5 years. So this is a historic week for me. Thank you. Over 400 pages. We're on track. We're on pace. CNN projection says that I will finish this book this week. A little John King joke there. But yeah, that's big history for me. So I'm proud that at least my resolution has survived 3 weeks of January. So that's good.
Yeah, I'm on the same time frame as you. I have less than 100 pages left, it looks like. It's nice to read. It's a nice way to just unwind, and we're not going to get into reading again. We just talked about this last week, but I'm glad that so far your resolution has stuck. This is always the most difficult part, the first few weeks of January, but you just gotta stick with it, and you gotta go from there. I had a dream last night that I went to a bookstore and I picked up a book. So clearly the reading is paying off for me. Do you know what you're going to read next after this book?
Yeah, I'm going to read, I don't know if you ever mentioned it on the podcast, but that book about the Patriots, the Dynasty, That's up next, I think. Or I think a basketball analytics book. I'm eventually going to circle back to Star Wars because that's what I started with. I'll probably circle back to that in the spring sometime. Eventually, I might turn that into an article on the website, which would be cool. A little book review kind of thing. Because clearly people will go to me as the world's foremost authority on reading. But yeah, we got a nice lineup queued up. So
now, did the you got to understand, I haven't watched these movies. Did the Stars win the war, or did they not win the war in the series?
Well, there's multiple wars within each trilogy. So in the prequel trilogy, which came out when we were kids, that's the Clone Wars. Then the original trilogy, which came out when our parents were young, that is basically the Empire versus the Rebellion. And then the Disney movies, which Star Wars fans, it's a very divisive thing. For me, I'm kind of on the side of it, but that's the First Order and the Resistance. So that's the I guess the war or struggle. So there's really only one full-out war, and then the other two are more like, I guess, insurrections, I would say, or I don't know. The Resistance is more trying to fend off these people who are trying to take over the galaxy, the First Order. But then the Empire and then the Rebellion is like trying to overthrow these people, evil people who took over the galaxy. So lots of layers within, a lot of wars in Star Wars. Does that entice you to watch, Ryan?
Maybe at some point. We'll see. There's a large backlog of things that I have to get to this year. So we'll see if that makes the cut or if that's a 2022 project. Yeah, I know Glenn was watching the Star Wars movies, and he got through them, from what I can tell. So,
well, he didn't just get through them; he enjoyed them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. But he and I might disagree on Disney, though, the Disney trilogy. So if you watch it, I'm interested to see how you view it. Because I know Glenn's a big Disney guy, so I figured he was going to kind of lean that way when he watched those. I don't know.
Just going to let that hang in the air. I don't know.
What?
Yeah. We're going to... Yeah, maybe... I don't know. I mean, you've been telling me to watch him for a while. It's if Glenn liked him, we seem to have the same taste on a lot of media. So if he likes them, then I'll probably like them too. I don't know. We'll see. That'll be fun. We can definitely talk about it on the podcast. That could be a new segment if I end up watching them, the Star Wars segment. But for right now, gonna just stick to some other things that I gotta get through and then reevaluate. But there are a lot of wars going on the gridiron this weekend. Great transition. The first game on Saturday, we had the Rams and the Packers. And I do have to say, I've been saying all season that I wasn't very impressed by the Packers. I thought that they were missing something, especially on the defensive end, but they did look very impressive against the Rams. I do want to say I thought that Jared Goff played well considering the circumstances. I thought that he really did put together a good game. The Packers are a lot better. And now, I was surprised to see this fact, but then when I thought about it, I guess it was actually true. This is the first time Rodgers is going to host an NFC Championship game, apparently, which I was kind of shocked about initially, but you think about it, it makes more sense. So that's exciting. It's nice to see that he'll finally get that opportunity. The offense looked good. They were churning. They were able to do a lot of different things well. And this is clearly the team to beat in the NFC. It took me a lot longer to realize that than everyone else, I guess, but I am in on the Packers now. I think that they have a great shot to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl.
So what I kind of realized about Green Bay is you and I were hesitant, but I guess rightfully so, right? Because of the playoff disappointments in the past, or even last year kind of getting run through by the 49ers, but kind of realized this weekend, this whole season has been branded in the NFC by like the Seahawks. Oh, a hot start by the Seahawks. What about, the rest of the teams in this division? And then we kind of focus on like the Tom Brady, Drew Brees duel. Then the whole NFC East race happened, and we kind of just forgot about the Packers because they were just consistently good throughout the entire year. They play in my opinion, a more forgettable division than the NFC East because at least in your division, Ryan, you have a lot of big markets. You have America's team and the Cowboys. So you have a lot more national TV exposure. But, in my opinion, it's the most forgettable division in the NFC. So they consistently run through it, in my opinion, quietly in some ways because I think a lot of people didn't really realize how good they were playing. At least you and I, right? I mean, they kind of go in and they were efficient, well-rested against a good defense. And yeah, I think it's going to be very tough for Tom to go in there next week and win. I think this could be the year for Green Bay to I don't want to say replicate 2011 because they obviously went on this road run because as you mentioned that stat, they've never hosted an NFC title game. So I'm happy for Jill and Billy, the two Packer fans of our content team. They looked good. They looked efficient, clean. Aaron Rodgers the MVP, and it's kind of cool to see him back to that form.
Yeah, I mean, I know the MVP is a regular season award, but I think if this didn't impress you enough to see that he is, in fact, the MVP frontrunner, I don't know what to tell you, and that's coming from someone, as I said, that wasn't very impressed with the Packers for most of the regular season. Yeah, I'm excited. For years, we've always wanted to see Rodgers face off against another top-tier quarterback in the NFC Championship game, and for one reason or another, the Packers just could never really get over that hump for the most part. But we finally have it this year, and I guess we'll stay in the NFC because you did bring up Tom. I want to say I'm glad that Tom of the Buccaneers saved us from having to watch Drew Brees throw the ball at Lambeau on Sunday when apparently it's going to be very cold and might even snow. That would not have been fun for anybody. That would have been probably worse than the Bears-Saints game on Super Wildcard weekend, and pardon me. Don't want to disrespect it. But Tampa Bay did go into the Superdome, and they did pull out a 30-20 win over the Saints in what might be Drew's final game as an NFL athlete, and he didn't. It wasn't the best parting impression. He threw 3 interceptions. He couldn't push the ball down the field. He just didn't look very efficient at all, which has been the story for him all season long. It's what people have been saying. We both agreed that if they put Jameis in for the entire game, they they probably have a better shot to win. Not even probably. They do have a better shot to win. I mean, we saw Jameis throw that ball to Traquan Smith, and it looked like he was the Saints' best quarterback. Now, Drew said after the game that he's going to reevaluate things and come to a decision just like he did last year. I can't imagine he's going to come back. So I'm assuming that this is his last game, but Matt, we'll start with the winning team first. Tampa Bay, now they've won 2 straight games on the road, and they're going to have to win a third one, but Tom did it. He's back in the championship game, conference championship game, I should say, and he has this team looking very good, but you said they're going to face a tough test at Lambeau.
You know what this is like for me, Ryan? It's like you ever see those movies, like those high school-based movies where, like, the guy really wants to go to prom with this girl and he ends up going with his friend, and he watches them dance on like the prom dance floor, and he's like sitting there kind of thing. That's what this feels like for me, by the way. Watching Tom Brady, a guy of, been in New England all this time. Now he's dancing with the Buccaneers in the NFC Championship game. So I'm happy for him. Yeah, it really does feel like that high school movie or TV series analogy. But in any case, I was wrong about them in this game. You texted me, you said you're picking against touchdown, Tom, and I said I am. I think their defense might give up a couple big plays. They did early, as you mentioned, to Jameis, but then they made the big plays. They forced all those turnovers. They put Tom in a really good position to put points on the board because their offense looked really bad, Ryan, in the first quarter. Started to pick things up, put 30 points on the board. So their defense was the reason I think they came out with this win. And then timely offensive plays. So I'm happy for Brady. I think it's going to be, as I mentioned, going to be a struggle next week. But yeah, defense wins championships, and it definitely won them the battle for the NFC South.
If you look at the volume stats for Brees this year, you might think that, oh, well, he had a solid season. If he wants to come back, I don't know why he wouldn't. And you look at it, 70.5% completion percentage, 24 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. If you actually I really hope Sunday, in front of a national audience, gave everyone the proof of why Drew probably should retire. Not to mention that the fact that he went through, obviously, a pretty scary health issue this year that caused him to miss time. He's just not effective anymore. And I hope that he doesn't pull a Jason Peters and just keep coming back for one more year and just kind of ruin his reputation a little bit. This guy's a future first ballot Hall of Famer. He's accomplished so much in this game, but it was tough to watch. I'm not even going to talk about the entire season. We've talked about that at length, but just last night, it was tough to watch him try to operate that offense and lead them to score points. I said it in our group chat, he bottlenecks that offense to a tremendous degree. So I hope that he realizes it's best for him and it's best for the team if he just retires and just doesn't come back.
Well, I think you're right that it'll open up the offense a lot more. I think a lot of people forget that Emmanuel Sanders could be a pretty good deep threat, but because of the offense that he's in, he's kind of limited to being short. And Joe and Troy mentioned it on the broadcast a lot yesterday when you look at all the guys around the line of scrimmage, because they really haven't tested them deep down the field, and you really can't. And you say you didn't want to mention, you wanted to focus on just last night, but I would say even the past couple of years, Ryan, I mean, he gets injured early, I think either last year or the year before in LA, right? And then Teddy came in, so it was last year. Bridgewater came in, and then he comes back like later on in the season. It's the same situation this year. So by the time he's kind of starting to get his legs back under him after missing all that time, the offense kind of is out of sync, and he still can't throw the ball down the field. And I get he broke like 11 ribs or something, and we can't really know. As someone gracefully put it this weekend, me with noodle arms can't imagine what it's like to throw an NFL football 20 yards down the field. But with him, it was a struggle, and I felt bad. And it's tough to see a guy who's like a cornerstone of like our childhood, right, or at least our exposure to the NFL. Him, Peyton, Eli, Tom, Rodgers. It's tough to see a guy go out like that. I think he's going to come back, Ryan. I think he's going to say, like, I don't want to go out like that. And he's going to come back, and it's going to be the same script, and then he's going to have another disappointing home playoff loss, and then that'll be it. But I don't know if he's going to go out in front of 3,000 fans at the Superdome with 3 interceptions. I don't know. And I know the Glazer report was out that that's his last game. I don't know. I think he might have a change of heart later on in the offseason.
Well, I think he's under contract for 1 more year, if I remember correctly. So if he wants to come back, he can. I do want to, you brought up the kind of sentimental aspect. I kind of felt it too, especially when James Palmer tweeted out that video of Drew and Tom with Drew's kids, and then Tom threw the touchdown pass, and both of them gave each other a hug. It does kind of make you feel sentimental. I guess I've finally reached that age in my life where something like that happens because, as you said, Drew's been one of the guys since we were kids. I mean, he really didn't rise to prominence until 06, so we were, 9 years old, I guess, and now we're 23. We'll be 24 this year. It's weird seeing a guy that's been around for a lot of your childhood. You realize that this is it. Like, hopefully, you're never going to see this guy play again. So let me ask you first. When you think of Drew Brees after he retires and then over the rest of your life, what is his legacy to you?
One of the better quarterbacks to play in NFL history, and statistically one of the best. High volume guy, puts a lot of points on the board, and that's not a diss to him. Sometimes high volume can be seen as a negative, but as one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen, right? I mean, to tie a bow on what we've been talking about, it's not just Rivers, or not just, I'm going to mention Rivers. It's not just Drew Brees, right? It's Phillip Rivers, Larry Fitzgerald, even non-quarterback position. Like, the younger generation, I'm going to sound like an old guy here. They're growing up on, like, Patrick Mahomes, like this new era of guys. And that's fine, but our era, right, was the Tom, Drew Brees, Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, Larry Fitzgerald, like some of the mainstays. And I'm sure there's more names that just aren't coming to my mind, but in any case, and even on like the Dwight Freeneys, Robert Mathis, like some of these guys that were just around for a long time. So it's strange. And then to answer your point, I mean, it's just strange, man. It really is. It's in terms of legacy, though, I think that we have to account and we have to talk about the playoffs. I think we do. I think it's something that we have to kind of put into consideration. And you brought up the point in our group chat yesterday. Rodgers only has 1, to which I responded, Nate Sudfeld has 1 too. But some of the ways that they've gone out, and I get this isn't his fault. The Minneapolis Miracle was not his fault. Even the Rams play, right, wasn't his fault. But just, you look back on it as a Saints fan and you say, we only got 1 Super Bowl out of this. And that's the point I was trying to make yesterday to you and the guys. 1 Super Bowl.
Well, that's going to always be held against him a little. He does have 1, which is good. At least he will have 1. But at the same time, I think a good way of looking at it is that if to win a Super Bowl in the NFL, you just need so many things to go right. You need so many things to fall into place at the exact right times. And there's almost an element of luck involved. I would go so far as to say it's not always just skill. I mean, you take a look at a team like the Philadelphia Eagles in 2017, everything that could have possibly needed to go right that season, it just all came together just like a puzzle. And that's what you need. It's tough to win 1 ring in the NFL.
I just want to clarify, I'm not putting this all on Brees. From an organizational standpoint, though, I think and your point is correct. I mean, the Patriots, if Marshawn Lynch runs the ball, we're down at 1 Super Bowl. If the Falcons play better in the second half, we're down another Super Bowl. So it's not all his fault, but from an organizational standpoint and from a fan's perspective, you look back at this and all the guys that came through there, Marcus Colston, Michael Thomas, Jimmy Graham, like some of the names they've had, and to have 1 Super Bowl. I mean, Granted, a lot of it's just bad defensive plays for why they've lost the past couple years in the postseason, but I don't know. I think that's going to be, in some ways fairly, in some ways unfairly, hung over his head when people weigh him compared to Tom and these other guys.
I feel like what happened in 2018 when the Roby-Coleman pass interference just wasn't called, I think that affected the team mentally more than maybe they let on. They just haven't looked the same in the playoffs since that game. The game last year against the Vikings, there's no reason they should have lost that game on Wild Card Weekend, and yet they did. They beat Mitch Trubisky Super Wild Card Weekend this year, but I'd go so far as to say that even despite Drew's limitations, this was a winnable game yesterday, and they still couldn't pull it out. So I agree. It's unfortunate, but when we look back, we're always going to have to talk about with Brees, especially when the Hall of Fame stuff comes up. It's like, I remember when he had all that talent and then the teams just didn't do anything, but that's just the way the NFL is. The games, you could say this about every sport, but the games are not played on paper, and ultimately the things, they didn't fall into place like the Saints needed, but at least he has that one, which I think is important. So you talked about his legacy. I know it's so tough because he's been in the league for so long, but do you have any memories that stand out to you when you think of Brees playing?
We mentioned the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It feels like so long ago, mainly because it was. But that whole season for New Orleans, I think, was one that stood out for me. It's I always remember him up until, I guess, 2013. Always had the upper hand on Tom, and he did in the regular season this year too, but always looked forward to the Tom Brady-Drew Brees matchup every 4 years, Ryan. And we're starting to see those marquee matchups kind of go down a little bit from our generation. So it used to be like Manning, Brady, or all those names. I could go on and on. But now we have both Mannings out and Drew Brees. So now we're basically down to Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers. I'll throw Phillip Rivers in there, and Aaron Rodgers. I think I said Aaron Rodgers. In any case, those four guys. And I don't really count Russell Wilson. Those four main guys, we're basically down to them because people don't really think Larry Fitzgerald's going to come back either. So it's my biggest memory was just looking forward to him going up against the best like he did yesterday.
I think that's a good way to put it. Some of the games that stand out, I need to start by saying, too, you talk about the Super Bowl being so long ago. I'm sure that some younger people don't understand the impact he really had on that city. I mean, Hurricane Katrina ravaged through that city, and it messed up so many people's lives really forever, but he was part of the reason why that city started to have hope again. He was so instrumental in not only establishing that hope, but rebuilding the city, rebuilding the community, and returning the Saints, from a football perspective, back to relevancy. Because for most of our younger lives, like when we were very young, the Saints were not seen as a good team. They just, I mean, even for most of their history, I mean, they were called the Aints for a reason. But Drew it can't be understated what he meant to that community. In terms of his games, there was that game against the Giants when he passed for 7 touchdowns, over 500 yards, and they only won by 3 points, 52-49. I'm not going to go through his game log, but if anyone has the ability to watch back some of the games that he played when he was in his prime, he looked incredible. This was a guy that he had so many question marks, not only coming out of college, but then when he left San Diego to come to the Saints, people didn't know if he could be a starting quarterback in this league and be an effective one at that. And clearly, he's going to be remembered, as you said, as one of the all-time greats. So if this is it for Drew, he left us with a lot of fun memories. But yeah, it's one Super Bowl. You really wish that he could have gotten at least one more, but that's your NFC matchup, the Packers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Rodgers and Brady. We're going to be lucky enough to see that. In the AFC, I don't want to talk about much about the first game. The Bills and the Ravens. The Bills won 17-3. The offense for the Ravens never looked like they could get much going. The Bills' offense itself didn't look very good, but they did enough to get the win. I mean, I didn't think the Ravens had a chance in this game, but I thought they could. I thought they'd do a little better than 3 points. That was a little surprising to me.
Yeah. So with the Ravens, Ryan, you and I have kind of talked about it throughout the season of the limitations that they have offensively. And I think that it really kind of came out on Saturday night. And I think a lot of people, and I thought this at one point too, that this had the potential to be a shootout. But listen, this point I'm going to make has nothing to do with Lamar Jackson, but I just don't think they have the correct amount of tools around him for him to run a multi-dimensional offense. I saw some former players or experts or analysts say it was kind of a predictable kind of game plan and formation and plays that they ran, and that's fine when you play a team like the Titans, who, like, at least from my perspective, I wasn't sold on all year. But when you go up against a team like the Bills, who has really kind of dominated over the past 2 to 3 months of the regular season and the postseason, you got to show more than gimmicks. And again, I'm not saying Lamar's a gimmick quarterback, but I think the offense has a little too many of them compared to just a normal, good, consistent offense. So I really wasn't surprised by the end result at the end of the day.
I like Greg Roman. He's one of the guys that, if the Eagles were to look at it, they didn't, but if they were going to look at him for their head coaching vacancy, I would have been fine with it. But they need to, as you alluded to, they need to kind of retool the offense. The guys that they have right now, they're not good at accomplishing what the Ravens want to do. So I think even that too, I think maybe if you add some new concepts in and give it a new image, I think that would help too. But yeah, Lamar, I know why people love criticizing him, but he's not just a running back that can throw the ball. This guy is a pocket passer, and I forget who made the point on Saturday night on the broadcast. I forget who really brought it up, but they said that if you go back and watch his tape at Louisville, he's a pocket passer. He wants to be good in the pocket. He wants to be known as someone that can throw the ball to all levels of the field, all sides, and be effective that way, not just running the ball. And was part of the offense not getting going his fault? Yeah, he does have some blame, but at the same time, there are ways that they can make his life easier that they're not doing. So hopefully, a fresh off season, they can kind of revamp the concepts that they have, and hopefully next year we'll start to see that MVP Lamar we saw a couple seasons ago. But Matt, I agree with you. The Lamar hate every week, it gets to be too much. I don't know where it comes from. It just gets to be too much. It's unwarranted.
Well, that was the next point I was going to make, and I was happy you brought it up. He can throw the ball.
Yeah.
I really hate the lazy narrative of, he's just a running back. He can't throw the ball. It's too, he's the gimmick guy. No, the fact that they don't have a lot of weapons around him forces these kind of plays to happen. And you're right, he really could throw the ball in college. And I think a lot of people forget that he's like our age too. So he's it's going to take some time, right? I mean, I think we're at this position, and I think I alluded to this a couple weeks ago with either Sam Darnold or Drew Lock or somebody. We expect too much out of people right away in college, or from college to the pros. We expect them to come in and immediately know everything. And I think part of that's kind of just because of how quickly some of these other guys grasp it. But again, those other guys are Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, future Hall of Fame guys, like Aaron Rodgers. You're not always going to hit on them like that, and it puts these young guys in a hard position. And I think Lamar too, it's just so much unnecessary hate. He can make some good throws. Obviously, people are going to say, "Oh, well, what about the interception against the Titans?" Not a good throw, but again, he's our age, right? I mean, we all make mistakes. when we're still trying to figure out our new jobs, right, and try and settle in. And it's still kind of a new job for him. He got put in mid-season for Joe Flacco in his rookie year and then kind of won the job over, but he's still getting his feet wet and still getting his taste of playoff football and different defenses and everything. So it's unwarranted hate. I feel like we're going to be doing this for a long time, Ryan, trying to fend off these bad takes about Lamar. I feel like this is going to be a long-term thing for us because I don't think people are going to let that go.
The Ravens were my Super Bowl pick coming into the season. Obviously, that didn't work out, but I'm still confident in their long-term future. There we go. They'll be fine. The final game we're going to talk about was Cleveland and Kansas City. Now, Buffalo, as the 2 seed, had the potential to host the AFC Championship game if Cleveland had gone into Kansas City and pulled off the upset, and they were real close. But Kansas City did end up pulling it out. So now there had only been one team in the history of the NFL to host 3 consecutive conference championship games, and that was the Eagles with Andy Reid. And now there's 2 teams. Now the Chiefs have entered that list with Andy Reid. The big story, of course, Mahomes got injured. It was a concussion. There's been conflicting rumors coming out since then on social media. Some people are saying that it would be a stretch for him to play on Sunday. Some people are saying that he is expected to play. It wouldn't be very surprising. We're not going to know. If you want to go full conspiracy, you could assume that there's going to be ways for the Chiefs to do everything in their power to make sure he can play. But I don't know. It's only Monday. We'll have to wait and see. But give credit to Chad Henne. He came in, and people were saying... I thought it was a good point. The fact that he played as much as he did in Week 17, he got those reps. Maybe it did help him. Instead of coming cold off the bench, not playing all year, maybe this did help him out. And give credit to Andy on a 4th and short. Instead of being conservative, he give credit to Big Red. He called a play that nobody else would call, and it worked out. So that was nice to see Andy get so much praise as he deserves. But Kansas City has advanced to the AFC Championship game yet again with a lot of question marks, but Matt, Cleveland's a good team. I do want to give credit to Cleveland. This team's going to be good for a while. I know I always say that the NFL stands for not for long, but this Cleveland team, they have all the pieces. They're going to be good for a while, I think.
So my mindset back in September, October, if people remember, was show me for the Browns, right? Because they haven't been there, and people were kind of anointing them as this next greatest thing. And they went out and played really well, and they showed me, and they showed a lot of people that they aren't the same old Browns, right? And that was the big thing that Jim Nance said towards the tail end of the broadcast, and what a lot of the players are saying. They're here and they're ready, and they're going to be a really good free agent destination. I think, and a lot of people forget too, is Kevin Stefanski is going to have all this time. Well, obviously, this being his first full season, we're going to see his new kind of outlook in terms of the draft and everything else. And it's going to be a really kind of tantalizing destination for a lot of people. So them and Baltimore are going to kind of duel for a while. I think Stefanski was a really good hire for Cleveland for sure. They didn't go down without a fight either. And they made that game a lot more interesting than it seemed.
And I would have felt bad for Cleveland if they won for the sole reason that they would not have gotten the credit that they deserved. Everyone would be like, oh, they lost Mahomes. Of course, that's why the Browns won. This isn't the same old Browns. That rule with the football going out of the end zone, that took all the momentum away. Imagine if Cleveland gets that touchdown there, then they get the ball to start the second half. We could be talking about a different story today, even if Mahomes had stayed healthy. But they need to. I really think they need to find some way to change that rule. I know some people kind of like it in terms of, well, the offense has so many advantages nowadays. Why don't you just let the defense keep one of the few things they still have? And I get that, but it's such a momentum killer, and that's not my argument against it. Like, there's other logical reasons, but Matt, what do you think about that rule? Do you think they should keep it, or do you think they should change it?
I think it's going to be a very hot topic this year. I think it's a lot harder until it happen. A lot harder to kind of look at it until it happens to your team in that situation. I think at least you got to still. You got to give some advantage to the player there, and just in this one situation to where it was like borderline directly helmet on helmet contact. Like it was really close to it being like a serious injury also. And I don't know. At one point it kind of deflected out and came in and then went out again. Like, I don't, maybe give the ball at the one. I don't know how you fix it because you're right. You do take away a lot of the remaining advantages that the defense has. And I get points are what everyone looks for nowadays, but I think it's something they got to look at. I don't really know the answer, to be honest with you, but there's got to be a more fair way. Because that if they score that touchdown, it's just a weird rule. One of those weird quirks that you find in sports that you don't really have a remedy for right away.
Well, unfortunately, Cleveland was not able to punch their ticket, but the conference championship matchups, Tampa Bay at Green Bay, that'll be at 3 o'clock. Buffalo, Kansas City, that'll be at 6:40. And so CBS has a couple of games left. So if you guys are as in tune with Super Bowl television broadcasters as me and Matt are, you might notice that CBS has the Super Bowl only 2 years after they just did the last one. And that is because they swapped years with NBC, and this has actually happened before. So this is, I think, the second time this has happened. And so now we live in a strange world right now, but the Winter Olympics are scheduled to take place next year. So by swapping dates, CBS doesn't have to compete with the Olympics, and NBC can sell their first quarter media packages that include the Super Bowl, the Olympics. So it works out for everybody. So in case you were wondering, I can't imagine anybody was, but I just wanted to get that out there because I thought it was interesting. But there's your NFL. So we haven't talked about Major League Baseball in a while, Matt, and we've had a couple things happen. Not a lot. The stove is still, so if we're setting the burner on the stove, it's probably like, I don't know, medium low. I guess. It's still not fully hot. The biggest news recently was the Yankees re-upping DJ LeMahieu 6 years at $90 million. It's kind of surprising that he couldn't get more money, I feel like, but at the same time, he did get that extra year, which for someone his age, I think is crucial. But, Matt, we could talk about the moves, but it's so upsetting, and I understand why it would happen this year, but it's so upsetting that everything moves so slowly for Major League Baseball. Other sports, you see the big names come off just like that. But baseball just takes forever. Like you have Realmuto out there, Bauer out there. Everyone's still out there. It's like it's taking forever. Again.
Yeah, so I think what partially makes the NFL and the NBA year-long sports is because of their free agency periods and their draft periods and everything. But like, you have Woj for NBA free agency on SportsCenter 24/7, right? Everyone's getting the Twitter notifications for Shams, and it's the same way in the NFL with Adam Schefter. And obviously money's playing a factor. Like a lot of the owners for baseball, I would assume, don't really know the direction that the season's going to go in. Obviously, there's going to be a new collective bargaining negotiation after this season, which, Ryan, after what happened last year, I wouldn't be surprised if we're heading towards potentially a lockout. I mean, it's like baseball's in a very weird place, and they can't retain the fans in a lot of ways because, in my opinion, you only get the fans for April and October for the casual fans for Major League Baseball, and you can't kind of generate excitement off of these big names because it'll happen once every 2 to 3 weeks. So you could correct me if I'm wrong, but the Lindor trade, right? Before that, the biggest deal was probably San Diego, right? And that was a couple weeks before that. So you forget about it. And that I think that's kind of what is hurting them to get on the same level as like the NFL, but it's frustrating. It really is, because as a fan, you want to get excited about baseball, but it used to be different. The winter meetings, you'd start to see a bunch of them kind of rattle off in December. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but whenever the winter meetings were in the past, when we were in high school, you would at least see a little bit more of a cluster of them from time to time. So I don't know what the deal is. I part of it's the uncertainty of the pandemic, though, too.
Yeah, I thought you made a good point about the lockout. I think that's a very real possibility. It was a possibility before the pandemic even happened. And now you compound that with all the other issues facing the game. And this isn't the baseball is dying. I'm not trying to make that point because I don't agree with that take. But it seems, with everything going on, it seems inevitable at this point that this sport gets locked out, which is a shame, but that's just where we seem to be at. So hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully they can come up with a fresh new CBA with new rules in place to make the game more appealing to watch. I mean, that's a conversation we could talk about for an entire podcast episode. But Matt,
a special edition BAP. I mean,
exactly. That's something we could rule changes and stuff to make the game more appealing. That's like an hour and a half right there that we could talk about.
And our friend of the show, Glenn, has made this point, I think, too. It's a lot about marketing your stars. He made the point when he was on our show that if Mike Trout walked down the street, a lot of people aren't going to recognize him. I think a lot of it goes into just marketability. And I don't even think, I think the game's exciting. If the game's exciting to you, you're going to sit down and watch it. And baseball is just different from the way our society moves, right? We move in this now fast-moving society. We want everything immediate. We want everything now. We don't want to wait, right? Baseball is like a very slow-burning kind of sport, just like their off-season. And I don't want to say the word niche as like a bad connotation, but it's kind of a niche sport. It's not as fast-moving, but the NFL is not really fast-moving either, because there's still a lot of sitting around in between plays, 30 to 40 seconds in between plays, depending on what team you're watching. So it's different. It's a different vibe, but it's just the lockout and the off season. There's just a weird taste in your mouth when you look at how the players are acting or how they're kind of seeing things, and the fact that teams like the Phillies lost $2 billion and don't want to pay people. It's just not the headlines you want, I guess. As Joe Girardi would say, it's not what you want.
Well, as I said, this subject in particular is something we could talk about forever. Maybe we will. Maybe we will in the near future, with the baseball season about to start up again next month with spring training. But I did mention LeMahieu. I'll go through some of these things and we can give our quick opinions on him. So LeMahieu's back with the Yankees. Matt, when that happened, my reaction was, that's cool because he's a good piece for them on the offensive side. They still need starting pitching. And that was my reaction.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny as a Red Sox fan to kind of see that this has been the issue for a number of years, is starting pitching, and they just keep trying to stuff the lineup, which is great, but you gotta get some guys in the rotation. That's what helped us win a couple World Series. It's what helps a lot of people in the World Series. You got to have some guys that could consistently throw the ball. So yeah, I agree. It's just it's comically funny that they continue to ignore this glaring issue.
Officially, it was made official today that the Phillies signed relief pitcher Archie Bradley. So they got a relief pitcher. Woo-hoo-hoo. Finally. They need more. And that was my reaction. Again, it's great that they got one. They need more because the bullpen was historically bad last year. You can't rely on just Archie Bradley and hope Neftali Feliz suddenly has a career renaissance. You need at least one more.
Right. I mean, you got a couple last year from Boston. I don't know what happened to those guys. I mean, they were pretty good when they left our town. I don't know what happened when they got to Philadelphia.
So another move that happened was the Chicago White Sox. So the White Sox once again are going all in. They signed one of the best players in the free agent market, obviously the best relief pitcher, in Liam Hendriks to a 3-year, I think it was $50 million contract. So they gave him a lot of money. I think MLB Network in their top 10 thing named Hendricks number 1, if I remember correctly. I love this move for Chicago. You can never have too many good, elite relief pitchers. I wanted the Phillies to sign Liam Hendriks, and they didn't. But I'd like this for Chicago. This once again, they're going to be one of the winners of the offseason, and we'll see if it translates to a full 162 games.
Yeah, Ryan. So that list also had Drew Pomeranz as number 2. So we don't know how we can correctly gauge that list. Obviously, Hendricks is still the best. I mean, he's been effective. It's funny, Ryan, in some ways, how Chicago's really kind of spending the money, stacking the deck, all for the players to hate Tony La Russa and want out by the trade deadline. Just because we talked about it before. I will be surprised if that works out. The whole La Russa thing. I will be shocked if that is all, sunshine and roses kind of thing. I will be the happiest guy in the world for him. But if it was Rick Renteria in there, I would be getting ready to, book my ticket to Chicago, New York for the ALCS. But I don't know. I don't really gauge anything with Chicago until I see that clubhouse dynamic with 80-year-old or however old he is, Tony La Russa.
Yeah, when I say winners of the offseason, I'm glad you brought that up. I need to rectify my point. I mean, players. We talked about this when it happened. I don't like the La Russa hire. I don't think it's going to work. In terms of players, I like what they're doing. But as you said, time will tell.
Ryan, and we could talk about this more too on a later show, but the NFL is going, and even the NBA too. I can't really tell you about the NHL. You could probably fill in that blank. We see a trend of going more towards younger coaches, especially in the NFL, right? Staley got hired last night for the Chargers. He's like 36 or something, and Sean McVay's 34. I mean, a lot of the newer NFL coaches are under the age of 40. There's a couple guys in the NBA like that too, and it's the opposite in Major League Baseball. I don't know why, right? So, and like Ron Gardenhire was around for a while. Didn't he? Who managed last year? It might have been Gardenhire or somebody, but these older guys are around for a longer period of time. Don Mattingly, I mean, no disrespect to Don. Don Mattingly did a great job there, but I'm just saying it's just a completely different mindset. The older guys get the favoritism in baseball compared to the NFL when it's hey, you just got out of college, you want to be a head coach? Sure. It's a much different mindset.
I think baseball more than any other sport is a example of old boys club, and that's why you see all these retreads just be able to keep their head above water for so long. It's just, in this sport more than anything, in my opinion, if you have those connections, you're set for the rest of your life. Even if you're not best, you'll always have a job. And it's not right, but
the direction the game's going in of you're going towards this math analytic equation. It's no longer a game, it's an equation. How do you expect Tony La Russa to manage a game when your front office wants it to be an equation, but he's going to see it as, the way the game is naturally played? He sees it as a game. Your front office is going to see it as an equation. I feel like that's going to be kind of the conflict with a lot of these older managers in the front offices.
I 100% agree. As you said, we'll see. Maybe by some divine intervention, it works out and La Russa becomes manager of the year. The odds of that happening, probably not. The other big thing that happened that we haven't talked about yet, this happened, I guess, about 10 days ago, maybe a little earlier than that, was Cleveland baseball team traded Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco to the New York Mets, and they got a prospect package of Andres Jimenez, Ahmed Rosario, Josh Wolf, and Isaiah Green. It is really shocking to see where Cleveland has gone since they were in the World Series 4 years ago. And that entire team now is basically gone. You still have some holdovers, but for the most part, that World Series team it doesn't exist anymore. I know that happens a lot in every sport, and in baseball too. Cleveland, this isn't an outlier. This happens a lot, but it's still sad to see this team that had so much talent just trade it all away because they. I'm not going to say because they couldn't pay for them. I'm going to say they didn't want to pay for them. But
what?
No,
I think
ahead.
the whole Clevenger thing really worked out for them too. I mean, I don't think they really wanted to pay him, and that whole fiasco that happened during the season, I think, gave them an avenue to trade them.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole Bauer incident as well.
Well, the one positive for them too, they have their rotation still right now is probably one of the best in the league, so they could afford, I will say, from a pitching aspect, to get rid of those guys and get prospects. It is, they need offense though. If they could get some offense. They'll be right back up there, especially the AL Central. But right now, though, their offense, it's looking a little rough.
Yeah, it was the issue last year also, especially early on. Baseball, you see a lot of these teams. I mean, you look at the Dodgers, the reason they're consistently good is because they're spending money out the bank. Every year, they're just shelling out more money that you didn't know they had. I think it's harder to keep a lot of players in baseball because the contracts are a lot beefier. They're long-term deals a lot of the time. Like you see the NFL and the NBA moving more towards like 3 to 4 year deals. Baseball is like 10 years. So it's going to be hard. You don't want to lock yourself into a decade's worth of a guy unless he's like Bryce Harper. I mean, I thought they would have won more than what they did. They had a really good core, especially when we were in college. Should have won a World Series out of that. I'd be disappointed if I was a fan. They're still watchable. That's the difference, Ryan. There's some teams that go from World Series contender to unwatchable. I happen to be one of those fans, but at least they're watchable.
I am one of those fans as well. From the Mets' perspective, team to beat. In the NL East, I think they have the pitching staff. They have the offense now. They might still make free agency moves. They have the money for it. Team to beat, and they might not be done. This is great. I'd like to listen. They're in the Phillies division. It's, as a fan, I really wish that they weren't this good, but it's nice that seeing now that they have an owner that's willing to invest the funds to make this a competitive team. When the Mets are good, baseball is it's fun. It's nice to see the Mets finally be good again. So I really, health permitting, I hope this all works out because this team is very exciting on paper.
Yeah, the happiest person in the world right now is my old roommate, Hot Take Mike Gamba. Huge Mets fan. He was always for years, Ryan, would pound his fist saying, we don't spend any money, like it's we're cheap, and now they're getting guys. So he's probably somewhere in Cranford, New Jersey, very happy right now.
Now looking at this transaction log, the Boston Red Sox have made 2 signings this month. They have signed Zach Kelly and Jeremy Rivera. So congratulations.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. Right, I don't even know who these people are half the time. In general, a lot of the guys they're bringing in, I couldn't name you 5 guys in our bullpen last year. It's a mess. This Heim Bloom guy is really starting to get on my nerves, Ryan.
Oh, okay.
Really,
all right. We're
really
gonna move
starting
on
to get on my
before
nerves. We're the Boston Red Sox. We shouldn't be signing people to 1 year, $2 million deals. Like, go out and get some people. Come on.
That's not Heim Bloom. Okay, you're good. I can't. I'm gonna get too upset. We're gonna move on to hockey.
Well, you're gonna
quick.
say it's John Henry, or you're gonna say he's limiting the amount of money we could spend?
Yes,
Because that's partially it too. But it's a mess. You can move on, Ryan. The Red Sox stink. They don't deserve our airtime yet.
hockey. We're gonna talk about this for a little bit. We'll get more into it, especially after the football season ends. We'll have more time to talk about it. As for right now, the season has started. Most teams have played 2 games. Dallas has yet to play any because they had COVID issues. They're supposed to play this week. We'll see. Florida and Winnipeg have each played 1. Everyone else has played at least 2. Some teams have played 3. And as of right now, I think the big takeaway for hockey so far, Matt, is that defense is nowhere to be found. In a normal season, it takes a while for defense to kind of get on the same page. In a season like this, it seems like it's going to take a while. We've seen a lot of high-scoring affairs from a lot of different teams. So I think that's my thing. I mean, for a casual fan, this has probably been great just seeing so many goals scored in such a short period of time. But for the more hardcore hockey fans, it's going to take a while before we start to see these highly competitive, low-scoring matchups. It'll probably take a few weeks, if not a little longer.
Yeah, but I think from an NHL social media standpoint and a PR standpoint, you want goals because it could really help bring in people, like you said, the casual fans. I mean, Colorado scored, 8 goals the other night? Like that gets engagements. That'll get people to draw in, like, hey, this Colorado team scored 8 goals kind of thing. So it has its benefits. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, in a lot of sports too, you don't really get on the same page defensively until basically the playoffs in a lot of sports. So it'll take time. But listen, early on in the year, you get a couple shootouts like that. It's pretty good. It'll be pretty good for your social media brand, your PR standpoint. So I'm all for it for the NHL, at least right now.
Yeah, I mean, you see Washington, they've scored 11 goals through 3 games. They've let up 9. Toronto, they've scored 11 goals in 3 games. They've let up 11. So we've seen Edmonton has scored 9 goals. They let up 12. Pittsburgh has scored 9 goals. They let up 14. So you see these teams that are scoring goals. The defense isn't quite there yet. But early impressions so far, Tampa Bay, I have to remember, it's a couple games in. So these are probably closer to hot takes than impressions. Tampa Bay looks good. Philadelphia looks good. Washington looks good. Colorado looks good. Everybody else, Toronto to an extent looks good. Everybody else, gonna wait and see. But Matt, your Bruins, tough loss the other day.
They stink. They stink, Ryan.
We saw number 1 Devils fan Glenn DeNegris in the group chat roasting the Bruins. So I'm glad to see he's switched allegiances that quickly.
You want to talk about defensive breakdowns. I mean, that goal they gave up, to which Glenn then talked smack about. I mean, I've never seen that from a Bruins team. That's been one of their calling cards ever since they won the Stanley Cup, as I point to the last time they won in 2011, which we were in middle school for. So you talk about Drew Brees and Saints fans of only winning 1 Super Bowl in that time frame. I mean, the Bruins are right up there too, with the core they had. So you want to talk about bad defense, right up there with it. But I guess that's what happens when you lose Zdeno Chara and just plug in a guy who's like half his age. So, I guess that happens.
Well, Matt, to end the show, by the way, we need to rest in peace to number 1 Islanders fan Glenn DeNegris, because clearly number 1 Devils fan Glenn DeNegris is back, as is number 1 Knicks fan Glenn DeNegris. So, to end the show, doing a little sports trivia. So here we go. Okay, here we go. True or false? This is a basketball question to start you off. Dennis Rodman once kicked a cameraman, resulting in a suspension for 11 games.
True.
That is true.
That was before our time frame, but I could see it happening.
All right.
Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
All right. Yeah.
How many playoff ice hockey games must a team win in a single year in order to earn a Stanley Cup?
16.
There we go. We're on the board.
Yeah, we're on the board. I got a hockey question right.
2 for 2. Okay. In football, when someone refers to a zebra on the field, what are they talking about?
They're talking about an official or a referee.
Okay. All right. Yeah. 3 for 3. This is... Your run probably ends here. How many inches is the diameter of a hockey puck?
I don't even know. Just skip.
All right. The answer is 3 inches.
Again, I said it last week. I don't remember learning diameter for the past 10 years, so I wouldn't be able to do the mental math on that one.
All right. Well, this will help you get back going here. If a basketball referee touches both shoulders, what are they signaling?
Timeout.
More specific.
More
specific.
What? It's just a full timeout, right? Yeah. Or a 30-second? I don't know.
Which one is it? I need that part. I need the time. I can't give you half credit here.
You know what? I'll go full timeout. It's 30-second, isn't it?
Okay, I'll let you fixed it. So
Yeah, it's 30.
I'll give you that one. What valuable this one messed me up initially. I don't know if you'll get it. What valuable gem can be found in every baseball park in the world?
A diamond.
Yeah, I didn't get that. I was thinking too literally, but you got it. So 5 for 5.
Were you thinking like if you mine like the dirt, like if you...
I didn't know what it meant.
No, it's a strangely worded question. So it's...
Oh, here's a good question. This is a fun question. In 1930, ice hockey player A.B. Goldberry caught on fire when a puck hit what item in his pocket?
He caught on fire? What? It must have hit like a lighter or something. I don't know.
You're close. It was a book of matches.
Something combustible. Caught on fire.
All right, here's a question that you'll probably like. In ice hockey, what is the regulation height of an NHL net?
4 feet.
There you go. Look at that.
Oh, that was right. That was a guess. I got that one right, but not the 30-second timeout one.
All right, this will be the final ones. What was the final score of the very first basketball game in 1891?
I have no idea. Why would I know?
I didn't know either. It was a
Why would I
barn
know
burner. It was a barn burner. The final score 1-0. So there's a lot of action going on there. Here's an easy one for you to end it off. What 90s baseball movie featured Benny the Jet Rodriguez?
The Sandlot.
All right.
Yeah, good movie.
So
you know there's people out there, Ryan, who have never seen The Sandlot?
I believe it.
Oh, quality film. So I did pretty well there, except for the diameter of a hockey puck.
You got the regulation height of the height of a regulation net. So
that was a guess. I pictured myself standing next to it, and then I subtracted.
Well, that'll do it for episode 24. We will get to number 25, a quarter of a way to 100 next week. Wow. Who would have thought? So thank you for listening to this episode, and we'll catch you guys again next time.